A few thoughts about 2 Samuel 2. First off, I'm sure you're familiar with the separation of the kingdoms. When Solomon reigned and let his heart be taken away from the Lord by his the strange women, the wives that he married, hadn't remained true to the nation of Israel, God's commands to stay pure, let his bloodline be pure. All the wives he had, who knows how many sons there were produced of all those wives. But God took the kingdom away, but for the sake of David, his servant, he preserved Judah. So that's why when we get into the Kings, that it says, and during the time of, King such-and-so who reigned over Israel, such-and-so reigned over Judah. So there's two kingdoms. Judah was one kingdom of itself, and the other kingdom was Israel, the rest of Israel. Now to carry that out, what became of that, which is even more interesting, is that, Judah, of course, had to be separated out because that's the line where Christ came from. It had to be purified and removed from the rest, and to make it even more of a special division. And then, of course, the tribe of Judah, they remained in Israel where the temple was and where the sacrificial offerings were kept up until Christ, and Christ basically wrecked the temple, by tearing the veil. It was all changed right at Christ's death. But that's why Jesus said to the Samaritan woman said to Jesus, salvation is of the Jews. And she was a woman of Samaria, which was the result of the rest of the tribes of Israel. Remember, it was Ahab or Ahaz who bought Samaria, and then all the Israelites intermarried and became known as the Samaritans, who were basically the Jews, but they were watered down version. They were the lost tribes. Okay, so this is what's cool. Now to get into 2 Samuel. This is like foreshadowing of that. When it says here, Ishbosheth, Shaul's son, was 40 years old when he began to reign over Israel, and reigned 2 years. But the house of Judah followed David. Isn't that cool? Even before God ordained that Judah would be separated from Israel, this occurred at the beginning of David's kingdom. Carrying on with other thoughts. This deal here between Joab and Abner, the Lord just showed me today. Now, I read this probably over a week ago. I've just recently posted it, and I'm posting this thoughts video near the posting of the other reading that, like I said, was done about a week ago. But as I was listening back to that today, the Lord made me realize something. I still don't know exactly what was going on with this whole deal, where, what was it? Asahel was chasing after Abner, and what all exactly happened there. But here's what is really cool. Okay, now I just don't know how to quite explain this because it's fresh in my mind what the Lord brought to mind. Okay, first off, this whole deal with Ishbosheth, is that his name? Yeah, Ishbosheth, reigning over Israel, that wasn't ordained of the Lord. God allowed it to happen, but it wasn't ordained of the Lord. That wasn't supposed to be a separation at this point between Israel and Judah. It's interesting that it did happen, but wasn't ordained of the Lord. So, now I can understand, kinda, maybe what we could explain. When you got, presidents that change, the changing of the guard in the United States. When a new president comes into power, even though, he might even be of the same, not Democrat, the same party. So in other words, a Republican, no, that wouldn't happen, would it? Well, at the end of some president, no, wait a minute, okay. Well, nonetheless, okay, yeah, getting myself confused here. Nonetheless, when a president changes power, they have a changing of the cabinet. And the people who were in the previous president's administration realize, hey, our days are done here, we're going to be moved out. But see, at the beginning of the kingdom, this was pretty much the beginning of the kingdoms. Saul was the first kingdom. So you got this guy, Abner, who was the captain of the host of Saul's kingdom. He was the head guy. Now, what's he going to do now that Saul's not around anymore? Just automatically be David's guy? Well, the Lord already put Joab in place, for David during the course of all the time of, being hunted by Saul and all the rest. Joab proved himself to be the guy, so he was basically the captain of David's army. Okay, servants of David, that's what it's talking about. He's the head guy over them. Okay, Abner was the head guy over Saul once again. Okay, so what do you do with him? Well, I guess you like got two captains now. But the Lord worked it out where this guy was eliminated. Now check out what happens. They both set themselves down at a pool, one on one side and one on the other. And this is something the Lord just pointed out to me today too. Abner was the guy who basically started the skirmish that was a-coming, but he was like, let the young men now arise and play before us. Let's play, army games here. Let's just sit back and watch these guys perform and show their might to each other. Well, as guys let things escalate and things get out of hand. Well, back in those days, it was no big deal to, hey, I stab you. So that's what happened. But Abner started it. And then, now I don't know what the whole deal was with these guys running and all that stuff. But then, anyway, Asahel was chasing Abner. And then he tells him, hey, look, turn aside, boy, don't follow me. And then he wouldn't. I don't know what this was all about. I don't know why he was chasing him. I don't know why Abner had a problem with him chasing him. But anyway, Abner kills Asahel. And it says, howbeit he refused to turn aside, wherefore Abner with the hinder end of the spear smote him under the fifth rib, that the spear came up behind him. Okay, this was the beginning of the end for Abner. As we get on to the other chapters, you'll see what occurs with that. But Abner was basically took himself out of play with these events. But he was the one that started it. But isn't it interesting also when we read well, first off, the character of Joab. He said, as God liveth, unless thou hadst spoken, surely then in the morning the people had gone up everyone. Okay, then Abner called to Joab and said, wait a minute, shall the sword devour forever? Knowest thou not that it will be bitter in the latter end? How long shall it be taken? Okay, wait a minute, that was Abner. Abner called to Joab and said, and Joab said, as God liveth, unless thou hadst spoken, surely then... Okay, I'm sorry. So actually, Abner was the one who kind of stopped the whole thing. Anyway, so that, they quit finally. But here's the deal. Abner was the one who started it. Joab, those guys are, I would guess, kind of basically just defending themselves. See, Abner also was a man of war. During this time, there was no battles. So he's kind of bored, I guess. So it's like, hey, let's let the men fight, okay? Abner's men were also, since they were fighting for Saul in battles, they were used to fighting. Now, David's guys, I would guess, probably were used to fighting too, but they weren't the guys that started it, and I'm sure these... Okay, anyway, David's guys, there was only 19 men, plus Asahel, that died. Of Benjamin, the tribe that Saul was from, and Abner's men, or Saul's dudes, so that 303 score men died. 360 men died. There's only 19 men died. So, anyways, that's kind of cool. But the other details we're still working on. As the Lord allows understanding. But as I said, once again, if anything, the point is the establishment of Joab, as we call him in English, his taking the place of Abner as the captain of the guard.